Have you ever been humiliated by the person you raised? I sat in courtroom 7 and listened to my daughter tell a judge I was mentally incompetent, that I couldn't make my own decisions, that I needed someone to control my life. She presented falsified medical records. Her lawyer attacked my character. And when the judge asked if I had representation, she actually smiled like this was entertainment. Her husband leaned over and whispered something. They both laughed. I had no lawyer, no voice. 2 minutes left before losing everything, but she had no idea what was about to happen, because in the next moment those courtroom doors flew open and the person who walked in turned her face white with terror. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another powerful story. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell us in the comments what city or country you're calling home today. Just a friendly reminder, while some parts of this story are fictionalized to make it more engaging, the core truth and lessons are very real. All right, let's jump in. The air inside courtroom 7 of the Fulton County Superior Court pressed down on my chest that Wednesday morning, March 15th, 2023, 10:30. I sat completely alone at the defense table, hands folded so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I'm Barbara Thompson, 69 years old, sitting here without a lawyer, facing the most terrifying moment of my life. My gray dress from Macy's felt suddenly too thin, too cheap. I hunched my shoulders forward, trying to make myself smaller. Maybe if I was quiet enough, invisible enough, this nightmare would go away, but I knew better. Across the aisle sat my daughter, Jennifer, 35 now, vice president at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. She wore a black Armani suit that cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. Her makeup was perfect, dark hair pulled back tight. She leaned back like a queen on a throne. When she looked at me, there was nothing. No love, no recognition, just contempt. Next to her was Derek Williams, her husband. 38, an insurance broker in a navy suit and Omega watch. He smiled like he was enjoying this. Their lawyer made it worse. Daniel Preston. 50 years old, they called him the Viper. He sat with his burgundy tie and expensive briefcase papers spread like weapons. This was just another case to him, another elderly woman to crush. I felt so small. All rise. The Honorable Judge Robert Harrison presiding. Officer Martinez's voice echoed as my legs shook. Judge Harrison walked in 60 silver-haired eyes that saw everything. Everyone said he was fair but strict. I prayed he would see the truth. Please be seated. I lowered myself carefully, afraid I might fall. Case HC-PH-2023-1847 Thompson v. Thompson. Preliminary hearing for conservatorship petition. My heart hammered. Conservatorship. That word haunted my dreams. Jennifer was trying to take everything, my independence, my home, my life, declare me incompetent. And for what money? Judge Harrison looked at the empty chair beside me. Mrs. Thompson, where is your legal counsel? I stood gripping the table. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. She's on her way, Your Honor. Please, I just need... Jennifer's lips curved into that terrible smirk. She thought she'd already won, thought I was pathetic for fighting back. My stomach dropped. Judge Harrison's face remained neutral. Mrs. Thompson, I cannot delay indefinitely. If your attorney doesn't appear within 2 minutes, you'll represent yourself. He paused. Given the complexity of conservatorship law, that would be extremely unwise. Do you understand? My face went hot, then cold. My hands trembled. I sat back down, not trusting my legs. 2 minutes. 2 minutes before I'd face this alone, before I'd stand against my own daughter and her expensive lawyer with nothing but my words. I glanced at those heavy wooden doors behind me. Please, I thought. Please let her come. Don't leave me alone. The clock ticked forward. 10:31. 10:32. Jennifer whispered to Derek. They both tried not to laugh. My chest felt so tight I could barely breathe. But underneath all that fear, something else stirred. Something that had kept me alive through raising Jennifer alone after her father died. Through every impossible challenge life had thrown at me, I hadn't given up yet, and there were still 2 minutes left. Those 2 minutes felt like an eternity. I watched Jennifer settle deeper into her chair, crossing her legs with the ease of someone who thought this was already over, already won. Then Daniel Preston rose to his feet. He buttoned his jacket and turned to Judge Harrison, his voice smooth and practiced. Your Honor, if I may address the court. We filed an emergency motion Monday to freeze all joint accounts associated with Mrs. Thompson. As of this morning, those accounts are frozen. The defendant has no access to funds, no resources to retain counsel. My chest tightened. He said it so casually, like my own daughter hadn't just taken away my ability to even hire someone to help me. Your Honor, we respectfully request immediate judgment. We have medical evidence that Mrs. Thompson is suffering from cognitive decline. She needs protection from herself. I wanted to scream that was a lie, but my voice was trapped in my throat. Jennifer leaned toward Derek, her whisper not as quiet as she thought. Look at her. She can't even afford a real lawyer. Derek's response was barely audible. This'll be over in 20 minutes. Then we can finally sell that house. Something inside me cracked. Judge Harrison's voice cut through the courtroom. Mr. Williams, Mrs. Thompson, if you cannot remain silent, I will have Officer Martinez escort you to the hallway. Am I understood? Jennifer straightened face, flushing. Yes, Your Honor. My apologies. But I'd heard it. I'd heard what this was really about. The house. My home. They wanted to take it and sell it like it meant nothing. Preston picked up another document. Furthermore, Your Honor, my clients made extremely generous offers. They proposed $8,000 and a reliable used Honda Civic. Mrs. Thompson refused this more than fair offer. $8,000 for a house worth over $1 million for my entire life. Jennifer couldn't help herself. Your Honor, if I may, my mother has always been difficult. Even when we're trying to help her, she fights us. It's part of why we're concerned about her mental state. My hands started shaking. I pressed them flat against the table but couldn't stop the trembling. Everyone could see how scared I was, how small I felt, how completely alone. Judge Harrison looked at me for a long moment. Mr. Preston, your position is clear. He turned to me. Mrs. Thompson, do you have anything to say before I... Something in his tone, the resignation, the inevitability made that crack inside me spread wider. I thought about everything they'd taken, my bank accounts, my independence, my dignity. But they hadn't taken my voice yet. My hands were still shaking as I slowly stood. I reached into my purse and pulled out a piece of paper, folded carefully, edges worn from where I'd held it so many times last night. I looked up at Judge Harrison, and for the first time that morning, my voice came out steady. Your Honor, may I read something? The judge's eyebrows rose. He glanced at Preston, who looked annoyed, then back at me. For a moment, I thought he might say no, but then he nodded slowly. You may proceed, Mrs. Thompson. I stood there holding that piece of paper, my hands trembling, but my spine somehow straight. Trembling dignity, I suppose. I unfolded the letter carefully and looked down at the words I'd written last night in my neighbor's spare bedroom. The same neighbor who'd taken me in when Jennifer kicked me out 2 months ago. Your Honor, I wrote these words last night because I didn't know if anyone would hear them, but I need to say them now. I took a breath and started reading. My name is Barbara Thompson. I'm 69 years old. 25 years ago, I became a widow with a 10-year-old daughter to raise alone. The courtroom went quiet. I worked 2 jobs for the next decade. I was a waitress at the Buckhead Diner during the day. At night, I cleaned hotel rooms at the Marriott until 2 in the morning. I would come home so tired my feet bled through my shoes. For just a moment, I wasn't in that courtroom anymore. I was back there. 25 years ago. I was 44, exhausted, walking into our tiny apartment at 2:15 in the morning. Jennifer was asleep, her math homework spread across the kitchen table. I knelt beside her bed, brushing hair back from her forehead, kissing her gently. I promise you'll have everything I didn't have, I'd whispered. I promise you'll never work as hard as I did. I'd kept that promise. I'd sacrificed everything. But that was then. This is now. I looked back at my letter, blinking away tears. I worked those 2 jobs for 10 years, never took a vacation, never bought anything nice. When Jennifer got accepted to Georgia State, I sold my mother's jewelry, the only thing I had left from her, to help pay tuition. My voice cracked. I gave you everything, Jennifer, every dollar, every hour, every piece of my heart. I looked up at my daughter. Was it not enough? Did I fail you so badly that you want to erase me from my own life? Jennifer's face went rigid. She stared at the table, jaw clenched. I turned fully toward her, the letter hanging in my hand. Please, Jennifer, I'm your mother. If you need money, we can talk. But don't take my home. Don't declare me incompetent when you know that's not true. Don't make me a prisoner in some nursing home. My voice broke. I hated how desperate I sounded. Don't do this to me, please. For one heartbeat, I thought I saw something flicker in Jennifer's eyes, something that looked like the little girl I used to tuck into bed. But then her face hardened and she stood so abruptly, her chair scraped loudly. You want to know why? Her voice came out sharp-cutting. You should have thought about that before you told me Derek wasn't good enough for me, before you tried to stop my wedding, before you spent 3 years telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The courtroom erupted in whispers. I stood frozen, her words hitting me like blows. Preston grabbed Jennifer's arm. Sit down, now. Judge Harrison's gavel thundered. Mrs. Thompson, Jr., that is enough. But the damage was done. Jennifer had said it, out loud, in front of everyone. This wasn't about protecting me. This wasn't about my health. This was revenge. And from the look on Preston's face, that mixture of horror and fury, he knew it too. His client had just destroyed their entire case with 3 sentences. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked down. His eyes swept over Jennifer before returning to me. Mrs. Thompson, I'm moved by your letter. But emotion isn't a legal defense. He paused. Without representation, I must appoint a public defender. Bang. The courtroom doors flew open. A woman stood in the doorway. 68, maybe 70. Silver hair in a sharp bob. White tailored suit. Black sunglasses she hadn't removed. Behind her, 3 younger lawyers filed in. The first carried a leather briefcase. Her heels clicked across the floor. Deliberate. Commanding. Preston dropped his pen. Derek's face went white. Jennifer whispered, "Who is that?" The woman stopped at my table. She removed her sunglasses, folding them smoothly. Her eyes met Judge Harrison's sharp and gray. Your Honor, my name is Victoria Williams, Senior Managing Partner of Williams Legal Group, Atlanta, New York, Washington, D.C. She placed a card on the bench. I represent Mrs. Barbara Thompson. The courtroom erupted. What? Jennifer shot up. Preston stumbled to his feet. Your Honor, this is irregular. Victoria turned slowly toward Derek. I should disclose that I am the mother of Derek Williams. Silence. Jennifer spun toward Derek. What? You said she was dead. Jen, Your Honor. Preston's face flushed. Clear conflict of interest. Mrs. Williams cannot represent the opposition when her son. Victoria turned to him. There is no conflict, Mr. Preston. She stepped forward, hands on my table. I am not here to protect my son. Pause. I am here to destroy him. Absolute silence. Derek stood shaking. Mom, please. Victoria's eyes were cold, distant. Don't call me that. Not after what you've done. I sat frozen. This woman, this powerful woman, was here for me. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. Order everyone sit down. He looked at Victoria. Mrs. Williams, I need credentials before... Filed this morning, Your Honor. Notice of appearance conflict waiver signed by Mrs. Thompson, motion to continue for 72 hours. She turned to me, expression softening slightly. Mrs. Thompson, do you consent to my representation? Hope flickered in my chest. Yes, I whispered. Please. Victoria nodded. She faced the judge. Your Honor, I request 72 hours to prepare. Opposing counsel must preserve all financial records, communications, medical documentation. Preston sputtered. You can't just waltz in. I just did, Mr. Preston. Judge Harrison held up his hand. Before I rule on any continuance, I need to address the conflict issue. He looked at Victoria. Mrs. Williams, you're asking this court to allow you to represent your son's mother-in-law in a case against your son. That's highly unusual. Victoria stood perfectly still. Your Honor, my son is 38 years old. He made his choices. And when I discovered what those choices were, her voice hardened. I made mine. She pulled a document from Andrew Torres's briefcase and approached the bench. This is a signed and notarized conflict waiver from Mrs. Thompson. She understands the relationship. She wants me as her attorney. Preston was shaking his head. This is absurd. She has a blood relationship with Mr. Preston. Judge Harrison interrupted, scanning the document. Does your client have an objection to Mrs. Williams' representation? Preston looked at Jennifer and Derek. Jennifer's face was twisted with fury. Yes, absolutely. On what grounds? She hates my husband. She'll be biased. Victoria's voice cut across the room. Your Honor, bias implies irrationality. What I have is information. The room went still. Judge Harrison leaned forward. What kind of information, Mrs. Williams? Victoria's smile was cold as winter. The kind that turns a conservatorship case into a criminal investigation. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Judge Harrison's gavel came down like a gunshot. Order, order in this court. But no one was listening. Jennifer was screaming at Derek. Preston was on his feet, gesturing wildly. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, staring at Victoria with her mouth open. Your Honor! Preston's voice cracked with desperation. This woman has a blood relationship with the plaintiff. She cannot possibly... Mr. Preston. Judge Harrison's voice cut through the noise like a blade. I will determine what constitutes a conflict. Sit down. Preston sat, but his hands were shaking. Victoria remained perfectly calm. She turned to face the judge, and when she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the room. Your Honor, I should clarify the nature of my relationship to this case. She paused. 30 years ago, Barbara Thompson and I were best friends. I felt my breath catch. 30 years. We met in 1993. Victoria continued, and suddenly I saw it, the tilt of her head, the way she held herself. We were both young mothers, both trying to build better lives for our children. We were inseparable. A flash of memory hit me. A coffee shop in downtown Atlanta. Two women laughing over cappuccinos while their toddlers played with blocks on the floor. Victoria. My God. Victoria. What happened? Judge Harrison asked quietly. Victoria's expression tightened. A misunderstanding. A business deal that went wrong. Words were said. Pride got in the way. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw real emotion in those gray eyes. We lost contact. I thought I'd never see her again. Then why are you here now? 2 weeks ago, I saw a news article. Victoria's voice hardened. Local conservatorship case. Elderly woman, no representation. Daughter seeking control of assets. She pulled out her phone and held it up, a screenshot of an Atlanta Journal-Constitution article. The photo was grainy, but I recognized her immediately. She lowered the phone. I started investigating. What I found... She turned to look at Derek and Jennifer. My son had married a woman who, together with him, had systematically isolated her mother, cut off her access to funds, convinced her friends she was losing her mind, and now they were here in this courtroom trying to take the one thing she had left her home. Derek's face was ashen. Mom, you don't understand, don't. Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare tell me I don't understand. She walked toward me, slowly. Every eye in the room followed her. She stopped beside my table and placed one hand gently on my shoulder. The touch was warm, steady. I lost my best friend once, she said, looking down at me. I won't let them take you away again. My eyes burned. I couldn't speak. Victoria leaned down slightly and whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "I know what they did. All of it." Preston shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. We have medical evidence. The defendant suffers from early-stage dementia. She can't make rational decisions about medical evidence." Victoria straightened, turning to face him. Her smile was dangerous, predatory. "You mean the diagnosis from Dr. Marcus Davidson, the same physician who received a $50,000 consulting fee from your client last November?" Preston went pale. "Or perhaps you mean the medical records that were conveniently lost by Meridian Pharmaceuticals' in-house clinic." Victoria pulled a folder from Andrew Torres's briefcase. "Records I've already subpoenaed and received." She walked toward the bench holding the folder up. "Your Honor, what they've done isn't just financial exploitation." She paused. "Let the silence build. It's attempted murder." The courtroom went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from surprise, the kind that comes from shock so complete that no one can even breathe. Jennifer's face drained of all color. Derek looked like he might collapse. And Preston looked like a man who just realized he was standing on the edge of a cliff. Jennifer shot to her feet so fast her chair tipped backward. "That's insane!" Judge Harrison's face was grave. "Mrs. Williams, that's an extremely serious accusation." Victoria didn't blink. "I have proof, Your Honor." She turned to Andrew Torres, who handed her a thick manila folder. Victoria laid it on my table, then faced the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to call an expert witness." Preston jumped up. "You can't call witnesses without proper notice. Emergency motion, Your Honor." Victoria produced another document. "Given the immediate danger to my client, I'm requesting permission to present urgent testimony." Judge Harrison hesitated, then nodded. "I'll allow it. But this had better be legitimate." "It is." Victoria turned toward the doors. "I call Dr. Elizabeth Morrison." The doors opened. A woman in her mid-40s entered, navy pantsuit, auburn hair in a neat bun. She carried a leather portfolio and moved with quiet confidence. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and when they met mine, I saw compassion. "Dr. Morrison, please state your credentials." Officer Martinez swore her in. "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, Ph.D. in forensic toxicology from Harvard Medical School, chief toxicologist at Emory University Hospital. I've testified as an expert witness in over 200 criminal cases involving poisoning." My heart pounded. Poisoning. "Dr. Morrison, have you examined Mrs. Barbara Thompson?" "Yes, 2 weeks ago on March 1st. "What did that examination entail?" Dr. Morrison opened her portfolio. Comprehensive toxicology screening, blood work, urinalysis, and hair follicle analysis. Hair follicles show substance exposure over several months. "What did you find?" Dr. Morrison's expression was clinical, but anger flickered in her eyes. "Benzodiazepines at levels 15 times higher than therapeutic dose." The courtroom erupted. Gasps, whispers, order. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked down. 15 times, Victoria repeated. "Yes. For those who aren't toxicologists, what does that mean?" Dr. Morrison turned to address the entire room. "Benzodiazepines are sedatives, Xanax, Valium, Ativan, prescribed for anxiety and insomnia. In therapeutic doses, they're safe. But at these levels..." She shook her head. "Someone has been systematically poisoning Mrs. Thompson for approximately 6 months." The blood drained from my face. 6 months. September. That's when it started. The fog. The exhaustion. Mornings. I couldn't remember the night before. It wasn't dementia. Someone had been drugging me. "What would those levels do to a person?" Victoria asked quietly. "Severe cognitive impairment, confusion, memory loss, difficulty concentrating, slurred speech, physical weakness." Dr. Morrison paused. "In an elderly patient, the symptoms would closely mimic early-stage dementia." Victoria turned to look at Jennifer and Derek, both frozen. "But it's not dementia." No, Dr. Morrison said firmly. It's drug-induced cognitive decline. With proper treatment, it's completely reversible. How did you determine the timeline? Dr. Morrison held up a colored chart. Hair follicle analysis. Hair grows half an inch per month. By analyzing segments, I can create a precise timeline. She pointed to the chart. The metabolites show consistent daily dosing from September 2022 through late January 2023. Late January. What happened then? The dosing stopped abruptly. Why? Dr. Morrison looked at me. That's when Mrs. Thompson was forcibly removed from her home. Jennifer's face went white. Derek looked like he might pass out. Preston whispered frantically to them, but neither responded. Victoria let the silence stretch. 10 seconds. Unbearable tension. Then quietly. Dr. Morrison, in your professional opinion, was this accidental? No, absolutely not. How can you be certain? Dr. Morrison's voice was hard precise, because the doses were consistent, daily, carefully calculated to produce symptoms without causing immediate death. Someone was putting these drugs into her food or drink every single day for 6 months. She paused, meeting Judge Harrison's eyes. That's not an accident, Your Honor. That's attempted murder. Dr. Morrison had just finished explaining the poisoning. The word hung in the air like smoke. Attempted murder. Preston was on his feet immediately, his voice sharp with desperation. Speculation. Pure speculation. Where's the proof that my client had anything to do with... Excellent question, Mr. Preston. Victoria interrupted smoothly. She turned back to Dr. Morrison. Doctor, what happened after Mrs. Thompson was removed from her home in late January? Dr. Morrison consulted her notes. According to the records, Mrs. Thompson stayed with a neighbor for 14 days. During that time, without access to the medications, her daughter had been giving her cognitive function returned to normal. Complete recovery. Complete recovery, Victoria repeated, letting the words sink in. She walked to her briefcase and pulled out another document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence a neurological evaluation conducted by Dr. Patricia Morgan, an independent neurologist at Piedmont Hospital. She handed copies to Judge Harrison and Preston. Dr. Morgan examined Mrs. Thompson on February 1st, just 2 weeks after she left her home. Her conclusion, Victoria read from the report. No signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any degenerative cognitive disease. Patient shows normal cognitive function for her age. I remembered that day. The kind doctor with gentle hands asking me questions, having me draw clocks and remember words. She'd smiled at the end and said, Mrs. Thompson, your mind is sharp as a tack. Preston was shaking his head. But the original diagnosis... Ah, yes, Victoria said, her voice turning cold. The original diagnosis from Dr. Marcus Davidson, Mrs. Jennifer Thompson's personal physician. She pulled out yet another document. Dr. Davidson, who is currently under investigation by the Georgia Medical Board for fraud in connection with 2 other conservatorship cases. Dr. Davidson, who received a $50,000 consulting fee from Meridian Pharmaceuticals last November, the same company where Jennifer serves as VP of Operations. Preston's face went red. Your Honor, these are baseless insinuations. Objection overruled, Judge Harrison said quietly. His eyes were fixed on Victoria. Continue, Mrs. Williams. Victoria stepped closer to the jury box, even though there was no jury, as if addressing an audience. Jennifer Thompson poisoned her own mother for 6 months. She bribed a corrupt physician to provide a false dementia diagnosis, all to obtain conservatorship and seize her mother's home, a property valued at $1.2 million. That's circumstantial, Preston shouted. You have no direct evidence that Jennifer Victoria reached into the evidence bag Andrew Torres held out to her. She pulled out a receipt sealed in plastic. November 18, 2022. Peachtree Pharmacy, downtown Atlanta. She held it up. A purchase of 90 tablets of alprazolam generic Xanax using a forged prescription. She handed it to Judge Harrison, then pulled out a tablet computer. Your Honor, I also have security camera footage from that pharmacy. She tapped the screen and turned it toward the bench. Even from where I sat, I could see it. The timestamp. The woman at the counter. The pharmacist handing over a white paper bag. The woman was Jennifer, my daughter, buying the drugs she would use to poison me. No. Jennifer's voice cracked through the courtroom. She was shaking her face pale. That's a lie. I would never poison my own mother. Victoria didn't even look at her. She kept her eyes on Judge Harrison. Your Honor, I have additional evidence. Phone records showing Jennifer searched benzodiazepine overdose symptoms and how to forge prescription in October. Bank records showing the $50,000 payment to Dr. Davidson. And she paused. I have a witness who saw Jennifer administering the drugs to her mother every single day for 6 months. The courtroom went silent. Preston looked like he'd been punched. Derek had his head in his hands. Jennifer was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. You can't, who would... Victoria turned to face her directly. Someone who loved your mother. Someone who watched what you were doing and was terrified to speak up. Someone you fired and threatened when she got too close to the truth. She turned back to Judge Harrison. Your Honor, I call Marie Johnson to the stand. Victoria stood at the center of the courtroom, her voice clear and steady. Your Honor, I call Marie Johnson to the stand. The doors at the back opened. A woman walked in, maybe 48-50. She wore a simple gray dress and flat shoes. Her hands twisted together nervously as she made her way down the aisle. When her eyes found mine, they filled with tears. Marie, my Marie. Officer Martinez swore her in, and she settled into the witness chair, sitting on the edge like she might need to run. Victoria approached gently, her voice softer than I'd heard it all day. Ms. Johnson, how do you know Mrs. Barbara Thompson? Marie's voice was quiet but clear. I was her caregiver for 5 years. I took care of her home, cooked her meals, helped with errands. She looked at me again. I loved her like my own mother. My throat tightened. I'd loved her too, like the daughter I'd thought I had. Can you tell the court about the last 6 months of your employment? Marie took a shaky breath. It changed. Around September, Ms. Jennifer. She glanced nervously at my daughter. She started making Mrs. Barbara's coffee herself every morning. She wouldn't let me near it. She said her mother needed a special formula because of her health. Did you find that unusual? Yes. Mrs. Barbara never had special dietary needs before, and Miss Jennifer had never made her coffee, not once in the 3 years since she married Mr. Williams. Victoria nodded. Did you ever observe Ms. Jennifer preparing this coffee? Marie's hands clenched in her lap. Yes. One morning in early December, I came to the house early. Around 6 a.m., I went to the kitchen and... Her voice broke. Take your time, Victoria said quietly. Marie wiped her eyes. I saw Miss Jennifer at the counter. She had a pill bottle, white tablets. She was crushing them with the back of a spoon, grinding them into powder. Then she stirred the powder into Mrs. Barbara's coffee, very carefully, making sure it all dissolved. The courtroom was dead silent. What did you do? I asked her what the pills were. She jumped like I'd caught her doing something wrong. Then she smiled and said they were diabetic sugar supplements, that her mother's doctor prescribed them. But Mrs. Thompson isn't diabetic. No, she's not. I knew that. I'd taken her to every doctor's appointment for 5 years. Victoria walked closer. What happened after that morning, Ms. Johnson? Marie's voice dropped to almost a whisper. 3 days later, Ms. Jennifer fired me. Just like that. No warning, no reason. She said they didn't need my services anymore. Did she say anything else? Marie looked up, and now there was anger mixing with the fear in her eyes. She said if I ever talked about what I'd seen, if I said anything to anyone, she'd report me to immigration. She said she'd make sure I was deported back to Honduras, that I'd never see my daughters again. My hand flew to my mouth. Marie had daughters, 2 beautiful girls in college. She'd shown me their photos every week, beaming with pride. Jennifer had threatened her children. But you're here now, Victoria said. Yes. Why? Marie turned to look at me. Tears streamed down her face. Because Mrs. Barbara treated me like family when no one else would. She came to my daughter's quinceañera. She helped pay for my youngest braces. She never made me feel small. Her voice broke. I couldn't let her daughter kill her. I couldn't. Jennifer made a choking sound. Her face crumpled. She pressed both hands over her mouth, shaking. Derek had gone completely still beside her, staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Victoria let the silence hold for a long moment. Then, "Thank you, Ms. Johnson. No further questions." Marie stepped down from the witness stand, squeezing my hand as she passed. Preston stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Johnson, isn't it true?" "Mr. Preston," Judge Harrison interrupted. "Unless you have substantive questions, sit down." Preston sat. Victoria turned back to the judge, her voice crisp and businesslike. "Your Honor, let's discuss finances. The plaintiff claims Mrs. Thompson is incapable of managing assets. I'd like to examine the plaintiff's financial competence instead." Derek's head snapped up. Victoria gestured to Andrew Torres, who distributed documents to the judge and Preston. Mr. Derek Williams reported annual income $150,000. She looked up. Yet last March, Mr. Williams purchased a luxury midtown condo price $380,000 in cash. Preston shot up. "My client's finances they are when seeking conservatorship based on financial incompetence." Victoria cut him off. Judge Harrison waved Preston down. "Continue." Victoria held up a bank statement with a palm tree logo. Cayman National Bank. Account in Derek Williams' name, opened August 2022. Current balance $950,000. The courtroom erupted in whispers. $950,000. Your Honor. Preston's face went purple. "Those are confidential records. How did she—" "Excellent question." Victoria's smile was sharp. When Jennifer Thompson removed her mother from the house in January, she was in a hurry. She'd been backing up her laptop to cloud storage connected to her mother's Wi-Fi network. Unfortunately for her, she forgot to change the password. She held up a screenshot. "Mrs. Barbara Thompson, the account holder for that network, provided me access authorization." That was true. Victoria's team had walked me through it 2 weeks ago. Inside, we found evidence of forged prescriptions, Google searches for poisoning symptoms, and complete financial records for both Jennifer and Derek Williams. She laid out documents like playing cards. A second offshore account in Jennifer's name, $650,000. Bitcoin wallets, $400,000. A Delaware shell company, Summit Holdings, LLC, hiding additional assets. Victoria turned to Derek. And bank transfers showing these accounts were funded by systematic withdrawals from Barbara Thompson's joint accounts Derek accessed after marrying Jennifer 3 years ago. Derek's face went gray. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. Amounts Mrs. Thompson wouldn't notice, especially once they began drugging her. She looked at the judge. "But over 3 years, $2.8 million. The number hit me like a blow. $2.8 million. Everything I'd saved for 40 years, my parents' inheritance, gone. Your Honor, Victoria said quietly, this isn't a conservatorship case. It's embezzlement, fraud, and attempted murder, all designed to cover up the theft of an elderly woman's life savings. Judge Harrison removed his glasses slowly. He looked at Derek, who couldn't meet his eyes, then at Jennifer, mascara streaking her face. "Mr. Preston, does your client have anything to say?" Preston looked at Jennifer and Derek, both silent. He sat down heavily. "No, Your Honor." Derek sat frozen-caught, red-handed, with his lies exposed. Victoria turned slowly toward Jennifer. My daughter hadn't moved since the financial records were revealed. She sat rigid in her chair, mascara streaked down her cheeks, hands trembling in her lap. "Ms. Jennifer Thompson," Victoria said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade, "you earn $280,000 per year as VP of Operations at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a comfortable living by any standard." She stepped closer to the plaintiff's table. "So tell me, why did you need your 69-year-old mother's home? a house worth $1.2 million that she worked 40 years to own. Jennifer's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Victoria moved closer still. Why did you poison your own mother? Silence. Let me tell you why. Victoria said, her voice dropping to something almost conversational. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about revenge. Jennifer's eyes went wide. Barbara didn't approve of Derek. She told you he was using you. She begged you not to marry him. Victoria paused. And you couldn't forgive her for being right. That's not, Jennifer started. You wanted to punish her. You wanted to turn her into a helpless invalid who would have to beg you for help. You wanted her to feel powerless the way you felt when she questioned your choices. Stop. You wanted to watch her lose everything: her mind, her home, her dignity. She deserved it. The words exploded out of Jennifer like a bomb. The courtroom went dead silent. Jennifer was on her feet now, tears streaming down her face, her voice shaking with rage. She told me Derek wasn't good enough. She said I was making the biggest mistake of my life. She tried to stop our wedding. Jennifer. Derek reached for her arm, but she shook him off. She's controlled me for 35 years. Every decision I made, she had an opinion. Every relationship, she found fault. Nothing I did was ever good enough. Her voice was rising, cracking, becoming almost hysterical. She needed to learn. She needed to know what it felt like to have no control, to have someone else make decisions for her, to have to beg for help. I stared at my daughter, this stranger screaming at me, and felt something break inside my chest. Jennifer's hands flew to her mouth suddenly, her eyes going wide with horror as she realized what she'd just said. Oh, God! Preston grabbed her arm and yanked her down into her chair. Sit down! Don't say another word. But it was too late. Victoria stood perfectly still, letting the echoes of Jennifer's confession fade into silence. Then she turned to Judge Harrison. Your Honor, she said, her voice cold and precise. The defendant has just confessed to attempted murder, with intent motivated by revenge, in open court, under penalty of perjury. She gestured toward Jennifer, who was sobbing now, hands covering her face. I move that this conservatorship petition be dismissed immediately and that criminal charges be filed against Jennifer Thompson and Derek Williams for elder abuse, financial fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. Judge Harrison sat back in his chair, his face grave. Mr. Preston. Preston looked at Jennifer, then at Derek, then down at his notes. When he spoke, his voice was defeated. No objection, Your Honor. Thank you for sitting through that painful moment with me. If you're still here, if you're still listening to my stories, please comment justice below so I know you haven't given up on me. Before we continue, I need to be honest, some parts of what happens next have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If that bothers you, feel free to stop watching now. But if you want to see how this all ends, how I survived, please don't leave yet. After Jennifer's confession, the courtroom sat in stunned silence. Judge Harrison picked up his gavel, then set it down again. He rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. This court will take a 15-minute recess, he said quietly. We all need a moment to process what just happened. The gavel came down. In the hallway outside courtroom 7, I stood with Victoria and Andrew Torres. Through the glass doors, I could see Preston cornering Jennifer and Derek near the water fountain. His voice carried sharp and angry. I'm withdrawing from this case, effective immediately. Derek's face went white. You can't just abandon us. Watch me. Preston was already packing papers into his briefcase. I don't represent clients who commit perjury and confess to felonies in open court. You two just handed the prosecution everything they need to put you away for 15 years. But Jennifer reached for his arm. He jerked away. Don't touch me. I have a reputation to maintain. You're toxic. He snapped his briefcase shut. Find yourself another lawyer. Good luck with that. He turned and walked away, his expensive shoes clicking down the marble hallway. Derek stared after him, mouth hanging open. Then he turned to Jennifer. What do we do? What the hell do we do? Jennifer just stood there, mascara stained and broken, saying nothing. Victoria touched my elbow gently. "Come on, let's go back in." When court reconvened, Preston's table was empty. Judge Harrison looked at the vacant chair, then at Jennifer and Derek, who now sat alone at the plaintiff's table like abandoned children. "I've been informed that Mr. Preston has withdrawn as counsel," the judge said. "Mr. Williams, Ms. Thompson, do you wish to retain new counsel? I can grant a continuance." "No," Derek said hollowly. "We don't have the money for another lawyer." "Then you'll be representing yourselves pro se. Do you understand what that means?" They both nodded, but I could tell they didn't really understand anything anymore. Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Do either of you have anything to say in your defense? Any evidence you wish to present? Any argument against the charges Mrs. Williams has outlined?" Derek looked at Jennifer. Jennifer looked at her hands. Silence. "Very well," the judge began. Then the courtroom doors opened. I turned and my breath caught. 5 people walked in, elderly, moving slowly but with purpose. I recognized them immediately. Mrs. Henderson from 3 doors down, Mr. and Mrs. Patterson from across the street, Eleanor Wu, who'd lived in Buckhead for 40 years, and Thomas Bailey, the retired judge who walked his dog past my house every morning. Behind them came Pastor James from Peachtree Presbyterian, still wearing his clerical collar. They filed into the gallery and stood together, a united front. Mrs. Henderson, 72, silver-haired with the spine of a general, raised her hand. "Your Honor," she said, her voice clear and strong, "we'd like to speak on behalf of Barbara Thompson." Judge Harrison blinked. "Ma'am, this isn't a sentencing hearing. I haven't ruled yet." "We know," Mrs. Henderson interrupted gently, "but we're this woman's community, her neighbors, her friends. We've known her for 25 years. She looked at me and her eyes were kind. "And we have things this court needs to hear." Judge Harrison hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Very well, but keep it brief." Mrs. Henderson stepped forward. Judge Harrison looked at the group of elderly neighbors and the pastor standing in his courtroom. He seemed to wrestle with something, then nodded. "Go ahead, Mrs. Henderson, but please be concise." Mrs. Henderson stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "Your Honor, I've lived next to Barbara Thompson for 15 years. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer." Her voice wavered slightly, then steadied. "Barbara drove me to chemotherapy every single week for a year. She sat with me for hours while the poison dripped into my veins. She held my hand when I got sick. She brought me soup when I was too weak to cook. She looked at me and her eyes were wet, and she never once asked for anything in return." My own eyes burned. I remembered those drives. The awful hospital smell, the way Mrs. Henderson would grip my hand so tight during the bad moments. "This woman," Mrs. Henderson continued, "is sharp as a tack. She helps me with my taxes every year. She remembers everyone's birthdays. She knows the names of all the neighborhood kids and their parents." She turned to look at Jennifer. "Her mind is perfectly sound." Judge Harrison nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson." Pastor James stepped forward next his clerical collar bright white against his dark jacket. "Your Honor, I'm Pastor James from Peachtree Presbyterian Church. Barbara Thompson has volunteered in our community kitchen for 20 years. Every Wednesday without fail, she serves meals to the homeless." He paused. "Last Christmas, she organized a coat drive that collected over 300 winter coats. She personally delivered them to shelters across Atlanta." I felt my throat tighten. I'd forgotten about the coat drive. It had seemed like such a small thing at the time. "She's one of the most capable, compassionate people I've ever known," Pastor James said quietly. Then someone else stepped forward, a young woman, maybe 20, with dark curly hair and nervous eyes. Your Honor, can I say something?" Judge Harrison gestured for her to continue. "I'm Maya Patterson. I live down the street from Mrs. Thompson." She twisted her hands together. 4 years ago, I was failing high school math. Like really failing. My parents couldn't afford a tutor. She looked at me, and I suddenly recognized her little Maya who used to ride her bike past my house. Mrs. Thompson offered to tutor me for free. 3 times a week for a whole year. Because of her, I passed algebra. I got into Georgia Tech. Her voice broke. I'm studying engineering now because of her. One by one, they spoke. Mr. Patterson talked about how I'd helped him after his wife died. Eleanor Wu described how I'd welcomed her to the neighborhood when she was a lonely immigrant. Thomas Bailey recalled my volunteer work at the community center. With each testimony, I saw Jennifer and Derek shrinking smaller and smaller in their chairs. These people, my neighbors, my friends, my community, were standing up for me when my own daughter had tried to destroy me. Finally, Judge Harrison held up his hand. Thank you, all of you. He looked around the courtroom. I believe I have heard enough testimony. The room went silent. He turned to look at Jennifer and Derek, then at me, then at Victoria. I'm ready to rule. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Harrison adjusted his glasses and looked down at the papers before him. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. He looked up slowly, his gaze moving from me to Jennifer to Derek, then back to me again. The weight of what was about to happen pressed down on all of us. In 25 years on the bench, he began, his voice heavy with something that sounded like sorrow mixed with anger. I have presided over hundreds of conservatorship cases. I've seen families fight over money. I've seen children who genuinely believed, rightly or wrongly, that their parents needed help managing their affairs. He paused, letting the silence stretch. But I have never seen a case of elder abuse as calculated, as systematic, and as cruel as this one. Jennifer flinched like she'd been physically slapped. Judge Harrison's voice grew harder. The petition for conservatorship is hereby denied in its entirety. Relief flooded through me so fast and so strong I felt dizzy. Victoria's hand found mine under the table and squeezed tight, but Judge Harrison wasn't finished. Furthermore, I'm issuing the following orders effective immediately. He lifted a document and began reading in a clear, formal voice. Order number 1. All assets, accounts, and property belonging to Jennifer Thompson and Derek Williams, including but not limited to bank accounts, investment accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, offshore holdings, and the property known as Summit Holdings, LLC, are hereby frozen pending criminal investigation and restitution proceedings. Derek's face went ashen gray. Order number 2 is... Barbara Thompson is granted sole and exclusive possession of her primary residence located at... He read my address aloud in the Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia. All keys, access codes, security passwords, and personal property belonging to the plaintiffs are to be removed from said residence within 48 hours under police supervision. My home. My home. I was getting it back. The walls I'd painted, the garden I'd planted, the memories of 40 years. Order number 3. A restraining order is hereby issued against both Jennifer Thompson and Derek Williams. They are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Mrs. Barbara Thompson. They are prohibited from contacting her by any means, telephone, email, text message, social media, or through any third party. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest. Jennifer was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking. Order number 4, and this is the most serious. I am referring this entire case to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office for immediate criminal prosecution. Judge Harrison's voice grew even graver. My recommended charges include attempted murder in the first-degree, elder abuse, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, embezzlement, wire fraud, bank fraud, perjury, forgery, and criminal conspiracy. He set the paper down and looked directly at Jennifer and Derek with something close to disgust. You will both be taken into custody as you leave this courtroom. Bail will be set at a separate hearing within 72 hours. He paused. I strongly suggest you use your time in custody to reflect on what you've done and to retain competent criminal defense counsel. You're going to need it. Derek had his head in his hands now, his whole body shaking. Jennifer just stared at the table in front of her, mascara streaking her face in black rivers, looking small and broken and nothing like the confident executive who'd walked in here this morning. Judge Harrison turned to me, and his expression transformed, softened into something almost fatherly. "Mrs. Thompson, you are free to return to your home. Your rights, your property, your finances, and your dignity are fully restored to you." He paused, and I thought I saw moisture in his eyes. "I'm deeply sorry for what you've endured. No mother should ever suffer what you've suffered at the hands of her own child." I stood slowly, my legs trembling but holding. Victoria rose beside me, her hand steady on my elbow, anchoring me. "Thank you, Your Honor," I said, and my voice came out stronger and clearer than I'd heard it in 6 months. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing me." Judge Harrison nodded, reaching for his gavel. "Court is more Your Honor," I interrupted quietly but firmly. "Before we adjourn, there's something I need to say." The judge paused, his hand hovering over the gavel. He looked at me with surprise and curiosity. "Go ahead, Mrs. Thompson." I took a deep breath. Then I turned to face Jennifer and Derek. The courtroom held its breath. I took a deep breath. My voice, when it came, was steady, strong. "Jennifer." My daughter looked up, eyes red and swollen. "I forgive you." The words hung in the air. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Even Victoria looked surprised. "I don't understand why," I continued, voice growing stronger. "I don't understand how the little girl I raised, the one I worked 2 jobs for, sold my mother's jewelry for, became someone who could poison her own mother." Jennifer's face crumpled. "I don't understand how you could crush pills into my coffee every morning, watch me lose my words, my memories, my balance, and feel nothing." My voice trembled, but held. "But you're still my daughter. You're still the little girl who held my hand crossing the street, and I still love you even though you tried to destroy me." Jennifer sobbed openly. "So I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, not because what you did was acceptable, but because carrying hatred would only hurt me more." I paused. "I refuse to let you poison my soul the way you poisoned my body." I made sure she was listening. "But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. When you're ready to talk, really talk, without manipulation or lies, I'll be here. I'll answer your calls from prison. I'll read your letters." Hope flickered in Jennifer's eyes. "But until that day comes, you are not welcome in my home. You made your choice when you bought those pills. Now you have to live with the consequences." The hope died. I turned away. Victoria took my arm and we walked toward the doors. Behind me, Derek's voice broke. Mom, please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to go this far." Victoria stopped. She stood perfectly still, back rigid. Then she spoke, voice colder than winter. "I am not your mother." Derek choked. "A mother protects. A mother teaches right from wrong. A mother is proud of her son." She turned slowly, eyes like ice. "I raised you better. I taught you to respect elders, value family, be honest and kind." Her voice dropped lower. "And you became a predator. You targeted a vulnerable woman for money. You married her daughter to access bank accounts. You poisoned a 69-year-old woman and planned to lock her away while you spent her savings." Derek sobbed. "An apology won't fix what you've broken. You're going to prison for a very long time." Victoria's voice was flat. "And when you get out, if you get out, don't come looking for me. From this moment, you are not my son. You're just another criminal who preys on the elderly." She turned back to me, expression softening. "Come on, Barbara, let's go home." We walked toward the doors, 2 mothers, best friends 30 years ago, reunited in the worst way. Behind us, handcuffs clicked. "Jennifer Thompson, Derek Williams, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and financial exploitation." Officer Martinez's voice faded as we stepped into the hallway. The doors swung shut with a heavy, final thud. It was over. Victoria's composure cracked, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry my son did this to you." I squeezed her hand. "You saved me. That's what matters." We stood there, 2 old friends who'd lost so much time holding each other up. Victoria straightened, brushed away tears, and smiled, small, sad, genuine. "Come on, let's get you home, your real home." Together, survivor and savior victim and victor, we walked out of the Fulton County Courthouse into the bright March sunshine. The morning sun poured through my kitchen windows, turning everything golden. I stood at my counter in my kitchen in my home, and did something I hadn't done in over a year. I made my own coffee. It sounds like such a small thing. But as I measured the grounds, filled the pot with water, and pressed the button to start the brew, I felt a surge of something I'd almost forgotten control. Independence, safety. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the kitchen with that rich, familiar smell. No crushed pills, no bitter aftertaste, just coffee. I looked healthier now. I could see it in the mirror, every morning color back in my cheeks, clarity in my eyes, steadiness in my hands. The fog that had smothered my mind for 6 months was completely gone. Dr. Morrison had been right. It was reversible. Something smells amazing. I turned to see Marie coming down the hallway, already dressed for the day. She'd moved into the guest room 2 months ago, not as a caregiver this time, but as a friend, a housemate, family. "Fresh coffee and blueberry muffins," I said, pulling a tray from the oven. "I baked." Marie grinned. "You're spoiling me." "Good, you deserve it." The doorbell rang, and I already knew who it was. Victoria came by every Saturday morning like clockwork, bringing fresh pastries from the French bakery on Peachtree and the weekend edition of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I opened the door, and there she was, crisp linen pantsuit, sunglasses pushed up on her head, holding a white bakery box tied with string. "Good morning, sunshine," she said, kissing my cheek as she came in. "Good morning yourself." We settled on the back porch, the three of us, coffee and pastries spread out on the wicker table. The garden was in full bloom. I'd spent the last few months replanting everything Jennifer had neglected. Roses, hydrangeas. The tomato plants were already heavy with fruit. Neighbors walking their dogs waved as they passed. "Morning, Mrs. Thompson," Mrs. Henderson called from across the street. I waved back, smiling. This was what peace felt like. Victoria sipped her coffee, then set down the mug carefully. "I read the sentencing news this morning." My smile faded slightly. I'd been expecting this. "It was in the paper?" Marie asked quietly. Victoria nodded, pulling the newspaper from her bag. She unfolded it to the Metro section. I could see the headline from where I sat, "Mother and son-in-law sentenced in elder abuse case." There was a photo, Jennifer and Derek in orange jumpsuits being led from the courthouse. They both looked so much older than they had 4 months ago, smaller, defeated. "Do you want to know?" Victoria asked gently. I took a breath. Yes. Jennifer received 12 years. Derek got 15. 12 years. 15 years. I sat with that for a moment. My daughter would be 47 when she got out. Derek would be 53, middle-aged, their lives fundamentally altered by the choices they'd made. "How do you feel?" Marie asked softly. "Sad," I admitted. Not for what happened to them, they earned that. But sad for what could have been. If Jennifer had just talked to me, if she'd trusted me. Victoria reached across and squeezed my hand. "That's not on you, Barbara." "I know." And I did know. Therapy had helped with that. But I still pray for them. Every night. Victoria shook her head, something like wonder in her eyes. "You're a better person than I am." "No." I squeezed her hand back. "You're the one who saved my life. You chose justice over your own son. That took more courage than anything I've ever done." Victoria's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back. "We saved each other, I think." Marie raised her coffee mug. "To second chances." Victoria and I lifted ours. "To second chances," we echoed. We clinked our mugs together gently, and the sound rang out clear and sweet in the summer morning. The past was behind us. The future stretched ahead bright and full of possibility, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt genuinely happy. After Marie went inside to clean up the breakfast dishes, Victoria and I sat quietly on the porch. The morning was warming up, cicadas beginning their summer chorus in the trees. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said after a while. anything. Do you think you'll ever see Jennifer again after she gets out? I'd been asking myself that question for 4 months. I looked down at my coffee, watching the steam curl up and disappear. I don't know, I said honestly. She's my daughter. A part of me will always love that little girl, the one who used to make me birthday cards with crayon drawings, the one who cried in my arms when her goldfish died. My voice caught slightly. But that little girl made a choice. She chose to poison me. She chose to hire a corrupt doctor to declare me incompetent. She chose to plan locking me away in a cheap nursing home while she stole everything I'd worked for. I looked up at Victoria. I can forgive her, but I can't forget. And I can't let it happen again. Victoria nodded slowly. That's wisdom, not cruelty. Some days it feels like cruelty. It's not. It's survival. We sat with that for a moment. Then Victoria gestured toward the house, the garden, the neighborhood around us. So what are you going to do with all this? This house, this life you've reclaimed? I smiled. I'd been thinking about this a lot lately. I'm thinking about becoming a foster grandparent, I said. There's a program through the county. They match seniors with children in foster care kids who need stability, someone to read to them, help with homework, just be there. Victoria's face lit up. Barbara, that's perfect. There are so many kids who need a grandmother figure, and I have this big house all this time. I gestured around. It seems selfish to keep it all to myself. You're remarkable, Victoria said softly. I'm just trying to make something good come from something terrible. Victoria reached across and took my hand. Her grip was warm, strong. This house, she said, looking around at the porch, the garden, the sun-drenched lawn, has seen so much pain, but it's going to be full of love again. I can feel it. My eyes stung with tears, happy ones this time. Victoria, I need to tell you something. I squeezed her hand. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me when I'd given up on myself. Thank you for walking through those courtroom doors. Thank you for choosing the truth over your own son. Victoria's eyes were wet now, too. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved my life. She shook her head. We saved each other. I'd lost my best friend 30 years ago because of pride and stubbornness. Getting you back, her voice broke. It reminded me what really matters. I stood up and pulled her into a hug. We held each other for a long moment, two old friends who'd found their way back after decades apart. When we finally pulled away, both of us were wiping our eyes and laughing. Look at us, Victoria said, crying on a beautiful Saturday morning. Happy tears this time, I said, the best kind. Marie came back out with fresh coffee and found us still laughing, still crying, still holding on to each other. What did I miss? She asked, smiling. Everything, Victoria said, and nothing. Just two old friends being grateful. Marie set down the coffee pot and joined our hug without hesitation. And there we stood, three women who'd survived, who'd fought, who'd chosen each other in the morning sunshine, full of hope for tomorrow. The sun was setting over Buckhead, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The three of us. Victoria, Marie, and I sat around the patio table, plates of grilled chicken and summer vegetables spread between us. Fireflies were just beginning to blink in the garden. This was what victory looked like. Not a courtroom, not a verdict, but three women, three survivors sharing a meal in peace. Victoria poured sweet tea into our glasses, ice cubes clinking. Can I make a toast? Please, Marie said. Victoria raised her glass. To the women who refuse to be broken. Marie and I lifted ours. The glasses met with a soft chime. As I sipped my tea, I thought about everything that had happened. 6 months of being poisoned, the fog descending, the fear, the loneliness. The moment I thought I'd lost everything, and then the doors flying open. Victoria walking in, my life being handed back to me. I learned something through all of this, I said quietly. Victoria and Marie looked at me waiting. Silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. I set down my glass. For 6 months while they were poisoning me, I was silent. Not because I'd given up, but because I was surviving, waiting, enduring. And when the moment came, that silence became my strength. Marie nodded slowly. I learned something too. What's that? Victoria asked. Family isn't always blood. Marie's voice was soft but sure. Sometimes family is the people who show up when blood betrays you, the people who risk everything to save you. She looked at Victoria, then at me. You're my family now, both of you. I reached across and squeezed her hand. And you're ours. Victoria's eyes were bright. 3 women, 3 generations, 3 different stories. But one truth, we chose each other. And that choice matters more than any DNA test ever could. We sat there as the sky deepened from pink to purple to indigo. The first stars appeared. The neighborhood grew quiet around us. I thought about Jennifer sitting in a cell tonight. I thought about Derek probably in a different facility, counting the years until he'd be free. I'd meant what I said in that courtroom. I forgave them. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean letting them back into my life. It meant releasing the weight of their betrayal so I could move forward, and I was moving forward, with purpose, with joy, with these 2 incredible women beside me. You know what the most important lesson is? I said, breaking the comfortable silence. What? Victoria asked. You can steal money, you can steal property, you can even steal time. And I looked at both of them. But you can never steal dignity from someone who refuses to let go. Marie smiled. Barbara Thompson's still teaching lessons. Old habits, I said, laughing. Victoria stood and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out at the garden, the neighborhood, the life I'd reclaimed. You know what Jennifer and Derek's biggest mistake was? What? I asked. She turned back and her smile was fierce. They underestimated a 69-year-old woman. They assumed age meant weakness. They forgot that we've survived decades longer than they have for a reason we're tougher than we look. And, Marie added with a grin, they definitely should have checked if your best friend was a badass attorney before trying to steal your house. We all burst out laughing, deep, genuine laughter that echoed across the yard. When we finally caught our breath, Victoria raised her glass again. One more toast. To Barbara Thompson, the woman who taught her daughter's generation that you don't mess with a grandmother who knows her worth. To Barbara, Marie echoed. To all of us, I corrected. To the women who survive, the women who fight back, the women who refuse to be erased. Our glasses met one final time under the starlit sky, and somewhere in the distance, I heard Mrs. Henderson's wind chimes singing in the summer breeze, a sound like freedom, like peace, like home. Looking back on everything that happened, I want to share something important with all of you watching these family drama stories. Don't be like I was, silent, trusting blindly, ignoring the warning signs. When someone you love starts isolating you, controlling your finances, or making you feel incompetent, speak up. God gave us instincts for a reason. Through this journey, I learned that grandma stories like mine aren't just entertainment. They're warnings. Elder abuse is real. Financial exploitation is real. And it can happen in any family, even yours. My advice, trust God, but verify everything. Pray for wisdom, but also protect yourself legally. Thank God for people like Victoria who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them everything. These family drama stories teach us that silence isn't strength, it's surrender. God didn't bring me through 6 months of poisoning just to stay quiet. He gave me a voice, and I'm using it to warn you through these grandma stories. If you're watching family drama stories or grandma stories like mine, remember, elder abuse can be prevented if we speak up early. If you or someone you know is experiencing this, please reach out for help. Don't wait like I did. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the core lessons about recognizing financial and emotional abuse are real. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content that better suits your needs.